Los Angeles. One cold, rainy night. At a red light, dozens of cars waited beneath the glowing city lights. People were going home. Families were eating dinner. Children were sleeping safely in warm beds. But on the other side of the street, a little boy was sitting alone in the rain. He was about 10 years old. His jacket was torn. His shoes were soaked. His hands were trembling from the cold. And beside him lay a tiny wooden toy car with one wheel missing. But there was something about the boy that made him impossible to ignore. He wasn't crying. He wasn't begging. He wasn't even looking at the cars. He was staring at the ground, as if he had already accepted that nobody was coming. A dark car passed him, then slowed. The brake lights came on. The car stopped. Inside sat Bruce Lee. Bruce looked into the rearview mirror. The boy was still there, alone. Bruce waited. Maybe someone would come for him. Nobody did. The light changed. Bruce could have driven away. Most people would have, but Bruce didn't. He pulled the car to the side of the road, turned off the engine, and stepped into the rain. The boy looked up. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Bruce crouched down. "You shouldn't be out here." The boy said nothing. Bruce looked around. "Where's your family?" The boy's fingers tightened around the broken toy. Then he whispered, "I don't have one." Bruce's expression changed, not dramatically, just enough. "What's your name?" "Daniel." Daniel. Bruce looked at the boy's face. "Where do you live?" Daniel pointed across the street. Bruce followed his finger. An old building, broken windows, a dark entrance. Bruce looked back. "You live there?" Daniel shook his head. "Sometimes." Bruce paused. "Sometimes?" "When they let me stay." Bruce's eyes narrowed. "Who?" Daniel shrugged. "I don't know." The rain continued falling. Bruce reached into his pocket. He pulled out some cash, held it toward the boy. Daniel looked at the money, then pushed Bruce's hand away. "No." Bruce stared at him. "No?" Daniel shook his head. "I don't want it." Bruce had expected almost anything: fear, suspicion, even begging. But not that. Why? Daniel looked up, and what he said next made Bruce completely forget about the rain. "Because money can't make somebody stay." Silence. Bruce slowly lowered his hand. Daniel continued, "If you give me money tonight," he looked toward the empty street, "tomorrow I'll still be alone." Bruce stared at him. A 10-year-old boy shouldn't have known how loneliness worked. He shouldn't have understood abandonment. He shouldn't have learned that money couldn't replace a person. But Daniel had. Bruce put the money back into his pocket, then sat down beside him, right there on the wet pavement. Daniel looked confused. "You're getting wet." Bruce smiled. "So are you." For the first time, Daniel almost smiled. Bruce looked at the broken wooden car. "What's that?" "My mom gave it to me." Bruce's eyes moved back to the boy. "When?" Daniel was silent, then whispered, "Before she died." Bruce didn't ask another question. He didn't need to. The little boy held the toy against his chest, and for the first time that night, Bruce saw the tears. One rolled down Daniel's cheek. He quickly wiped it away. "I wasn't crying." Bruce nodded. "I know." That answer made Daniel look at him. Bruce didn't tell him to be strong. He didn't tell him everything would be okay. He simply said, "You don't have to pretend with me." Daniel looked away, and that was the moment something inside the boy broke. Not because Bruce had hurt him, because for the first time, someone had noticed. Bruce stood. "Come with me." Daniel immediately stepped back. "Where?" "Somewhere warm." "I can't." "Why?" Daniel hesitated. "People always say that." Bruce understood. People had promised him things before, then disappeared. Bruce pointed toward his car. "You don't have to trust me." Daniel looked confused. Bruce continued, "Just come with me for tonight." Daniel stared at the car, then at Bruce, then at the old building behind him. He had two choices: stay where nobody knew his name, or follow a stranger who had stopped when everyone else kept driving. Daniel slowly stood. He picked up his broken toy and followed Bruce. The training hall was almost empty when they arrived. Daniel stepped inside. He heard the sound of fists hitting heavy bags. Thud, thud, thud. The room smelled of leather, sweat, and old wooden floors. Men were training. Bruce walked past them. Daniel stayed close behind. He looked tiny in the middle of the room. Bruce stopped near a bench. He picked up a pair of gloves, held them out. Daniel stared. "What are these for?" "Training." "I can't fight." Bruce smiled. "Good." Daniel frowned. "Good?" "If you already knew how—" Bruce handed him the gloves. "I wouldn't have anything to teach you." Daniel put them on. They were too large. Bruce tightened the straps, then stepped back. "Stand up straight." Daniel did. "Hands up." Daniel raised them. "Now." Bruce looked into his eyes. "Hit the bag." Daniel looked at the heavy bag. He punched. The bag barely moved. A few men nearby looked over. Daniel immediately lowered his head. Bruce noticed. "Again." Daniel punched. Nothing. "Again." Another punch. Nothing. Daniel looked embarrassed. Bruce didn't laugh. "Again." Daniel punched. Again, again, again. His breathing became heavier. His arms started shaking. Finally, he stopped. "I can't." Bruce walked toward him. "Why?" "Because I'm weak." Bruce's face became serious. "Who told you that?" Daniel didn't answer. Bruce waited. Then Daniel whispered, "Everyone." Bruce looked around the room, then back at the boy. "Then everyone is wrong." Daniel stared at him. Bruce pointed toward the bag. "Hit it again." Daniel did, this time harder. Bruce nodded. "Again." Daniel punched. "Again." He punched. "Again." Daniel screamed and hit the bag with everything he had. The bag swung backward. Daniel stared at it. Bruce said nothing, but Daniel saw something in his eyes. Not pity, not sympathy. Respect. And Daniel had almost forgotten what that felt like. The next morning, Daniel returned. Bruce was already waiting. Daniel stood at the doorway. "You remembered me?" Bruce looked at him. "I told you to come back." Daniel nodded. "I thought maybe you forgot." Bruce shook his head. "I don't forget people who are trying." Those words stayed with Daniel. From that day forward, he came every morning, rain or sunshine, hungry or tired. He came. Bruce trained him, but the lessons weren't really about fighting.
Bruce taught him balance, discipline, patience, control. Most importantly, he taught him how to stand after falling. Daniel fell hundreds of times, sometimes during training, sometimes in life.
At school, children still laughed at his clothes. One afternoon, a boy grabbed his backpack and threw it into a puddle. Books scattered across the ground. Everyone laughed. Daniel bent down. He picked them up. Then the boy kicked his wooden toy car. It flew across the pavement. Daniel froze. His eyes followed it. The toy hit a wall. The little wheel snapped off completely. The boys laughed. "What are you going to do?" Daniel clenched his fists. For 1 second, he wanted to hit him. Then he remembered Bruce's voice. Control is strength. Daniel took a breath. He walked away. But when he reached the corner, he stopped. He looked at the broken toy, and something inside him whispered, "I'm tired of being weak." That evening, Daniel entered the training hall. Bruce immediately noticed his face. "What happened?" "Nothing." Bruce looked at the bruise near his eye. "Nothing?" Daniel looked away. Bruce waited. Finally, Daniel said, "They took my things." Bruce said nothing.
"They broke my toy."
Still nothing. Then Daniel's voice cracked, and everyone laughed. Bruce walked toward him. "Did you fight them?" Daniel shook his head. "No." "Why?" "I remembered what you said." Bruce nodded. Daniel looked at him. "But I still feel weak." Bruce stopped, then said something Daniel would remember for the rest of his life. "Being hurt doesn't make you weak." Daniel looked up. "Being poor doesn't make you weak." Another step. "Being alone doesn't make you weak." Bruce pointed toward Daniel's chest. "But believing you are worthless?" He paused. "That's what destroys a person." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to stop believing it." Bruce's voice softened. "Then I'll teach you." Daniel stared at him. "You will?" Bruce nodded, "but not by making you stronger than everyone else." He pointed toward the floor. "By making you stronger than the version of yourself that wants to give up." Daniel slowly nodded. Weeks became months. Daniel changed. Not overnight, not magically. Slowly, painfully. He learned to wake up early. He learned to keep his word. He learned to fall without being ashamed. And he learned something even more important. Nobody was coming to save him. But that didn't mean his life was over. It meant he had to learn how to save himself. One night, after a brutal training session, Daniel collapsed onto the floor. He was exhausted. "I can't do another one." Bruce looked at him. "Then don't." Daniel looked surprised. "What?" "Don't do another one." Bruce turned away. Daniel sat there confused. Then Bruce stopped. "But tomorrow," he looked back, "you do one more." Daniel smiled. A tiny smile, but it was real. Then came the night everything changed. Daniel arrived late. Bruce was standing alone in the training hall. The lights were dim. The room was unusually quiet. Daniel walked inside. "You wanted to see me?" Bruce nodded. "Yes." Daniel waited. Bruce walked toward a wooden box. He opened it. Inside was something Daniel had never seen before. A new pair of gloves, a clean jacket, and a small black notebook. Bruce picked up the notebook. "This is for you," Daniel took it. Why? Because I want you to write something every night. What? Bruce looked directly at him. One thing you did today that you thought you couldn't do. Daniel looked at the empty pages, then back at Bruce. What if I can't think of anything? Bruce smiled. Then write, he paused. I got up. Daniel's eyes became wet. Bruce closed the notebook. Because sometimes his voice became quieter. Getting up is the victory. Daniel held the notebook against his chest. He didn't know it yet, but that notebook would follow him for years. And one day, long after Bruce was gone, Daniel would open its first page again and remember the night a stranger had stopped his car when everyone else kept driving. But before that day came, Bruce had one final lesson for Daniel, a lesson so difficult that even Bruce didn't know how much it would change the boy. He looked at Daniel and said, Tomorrow morning, I want you here before sunrise. Daniel nodded. Why? Bruce stared at him. Because tomorrow? A long pause. We're going to find out what you're really made of. Daniel smiled, but Bruce didn't. Something about his expression told Daniel this wasn't going to be another ordinary training session. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow would be the day Daniel finally discovered whether the boy who had once been forgotten by everyone could become someone who would never forget himself. And neither Bruce nor Daniel knew that the hardest part of his journey had only just begun. The sun had not risen yet. Los Angeles was still asleep. The streets were almost empty. The city lights were fading one by one. And inside the quiet training hall, Bruce Lee was already waiting. He stood alone in the center of the room. No music, no students, no conversation, just silence. Then the door opened. Daniel stepped inside. He was breathing heavily. His hair was wet from the morning air, but he had come. Bruce looked at the clock, then at Daniel. You're early. Daniel nodded. You told me to be here before sunrise. Bruce gave a small smile. Good. Daniel looked around. What are we doing? Bruce didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward the center of the room. He pointed at the floor. Stand there. Daniel obeyed. Bruce walked around him slowly. Close your eyes. Daniel closed them. Now. Bruce's voice became quiet. Don't move. Daniel waited. 10 seconds. 20. 30. His legs began to shake. He opened one eye. Bruce was standing several feet away. Close it. Daniel did. Another minute passed. His body became uncomfortable. His feet hurt. His shoulders tightened. Finally, Daniel whispered, How long? Bruce answered, Until you stop asking. Daniel almost laughed, but he stayed still. The sun slowly began rising outside. Golden light entered through the windows. Daniel's legs were shaking badly now, but he didn't move. Bruce watched, then finally said, Open your eyes. Daniel opened them. Bruce walked toward him. What did you learn? Daniel shrugged. I don't know. Bruce nodded. Exactly. Daniel frowned. Bruce pointed toward the floor. You spent your entire life thinking strength means moving faster, hitting harder, and beating someone. He paused. But sometimes, Bruce looked directly into Daniel's eyes. Strength means standing still while everything inside you is screaming at you to quit. Daniel didn't answer.
because he understood. Not completely, but enough.
The training continued. Bruce made Daniel repeat the same movement hundreds of times. One step, one punch, one breath. Again, again, again. Daniel became frustrated. "This is pointless." Bruce looked at him. "Why?" "Because I keep doing the same thing." Bruce smiled. "And what do you think life is?" Daniel didn't know what to say. Bruce continued. "You wake up, you struggle, you fall, you get back up, then you do it again." Daniel looked down. Bruce stepped closer. "The difference is," he pointed at Daniel, "every time you get back up, you are not the same person." Days passed, then weeks. Daniel's body became stronger. But something else changed first. His eyes. The frightened little boy who once looked at the ground whenever someone spoke to him was slowly disappearing. He began looking people in the eye. He began speaking. He began asking questions. He began believing that his voice mattered. But life wasn't finished testing him. One afternoon, Daniel returned from school. He entered the training hall quietly. Bruce was working with another student. Daniel stood near the wall. He didn't say anything. Bruce noticed him. "Daniel?" No response. "Come here." Daniel slowly walked over. Bruce looked at his face. There was something wrong. "What's happened?" "Nothing." Bruce waited. Daniel shook his head. "Really?" Bruce didn't believe him. But he didn't force him. He simply said, "Sit." Daniel sat. A few minutes passed. Finally, Daniel whispered, "My father came back." Bruce became still. "What?" Daniel looked at the floor. "My father." Bruce sat beside him. "What happened?" Daniel's voice was barely audible. "He found me." Bruce waited. "He said he wants me to go with him." Bruce didn't immediately respond. "Do you want to?" Daniel shook his head. "I don't know." "Why?" "Because—" Daniel swallowed. "I don't remember him." Bruce looked at the boy. "You remember your mother?" Daniel nodded. "But not him?" "No." Bruce understood. Daniel was facing something no child should have to face. The man who had disappeared from his life had suddenly returned. And now Daniel had to decide whether to trust him. That evening, Daniel's father came to the training hall. He was a tired-looking man. His clothes were worn. His face showed years of regret. He stood at the entrance. Bruce looked at him. "Can I help you?" The man looked past Bruce. "I'm here for my son." Daniel froze. Bruce turned. Daniel was standing in the corner. The man's eyes met his. For several seconds, neither moved. Then the man whispered, "Daniel." Daniel didn't answer. The man took one step forward. "I've been looking for you." Daniel's eyes filled with anger. "You didn't look hard enough." The room became silent. The man's face fell. "I know." Daniel's voice became louder. "Where were you?" "I made mistakes." "You left me." "I know." "You weren't there when Mom died." The man's eyes filled with tears. "I know." Daniel clenched his fists. "Then why are you here now?" The man looked at him. "Because you're my son." Daniel shook his head. "That doesn't make you my father." Silence. Bruce watched carefully. He could have interrupted. He didn't. This was Daniel's battle, not a physical one, a battle inside his heart. The man slowly lowered his head. I deserve that. Daniel turned away. His father took another step. I don't expect you to forgive me. Daniel looked back. Then what do you want? The man swallowed. I want a chance. Daniel stared at him. A chance to do what? To be there. Daniel's expression hardened. You already had that chance. The man had no answer. He slowly walked away. Daniel watched him disappear through the doorway.
Then Daniel whispered, Why did he come back now? Bruce answered quietly, Sometimes people return when they finally understand what they lost. Daniel looked at him. Should I forgive him? Bruce shook his head. That's your choice. Would you? Bruce thought for a moment. I would forgive him. Daniel looked surprised. But forgiveness doesn't mean you have to forget. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat beneath the old building entrance. The broken wooden car rested beside him. He opened Bruce's black notebook. On the first page, Bruce had written, You are stronger than you think. Daniel stared at the words, then turned the page. He began writing. Today my father came back. He stopped, then wrote, I don't know if I hate him. He stopped again, then, I don't know if I miss him. A tear fell onto the page. Daniel wiped it away. Then he wrote the final sentence. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. He closed the notebook, and for the first time, he cried without hiding it. The next morning, Daniel went to Bruce. He looked exhausted. Bruce didn't ask what happened. He already knew. Daniel sat down. I think I'm angry. Bruce nodded. That's okay. I think I'm sad. That's okay too. I think, Daniel's voice broke, I still want him to be my father. Bruce looked at him. That is okay. Daniel looked surprised. You're not going to tell me to forget him? No. Why? Bruce answered. Because being strong doesn't mean pretending you don't care. Daniel looked down. Bruce continued. You can be angry and still love someone. You can forgive someone and still remember what they did. You can miss someone, he paused, and still choose to protect yourself. Daniel listened. Bruce placed a hand on his shoulder. Your heart is not a weakness. Daniel's eyes filled with tears again. Then what is? Bruce smiled. Giving someone else control over it. That afternoon, Bruce took Daniel outside. They walked through a quiet park. Daniel looked confused. Why are we here? Bruce pointed toward a tree. Look. Daniel saw a small branch broken off the tree. Bruce picked it up. Do you know what happens when a tree loses a branch? Daniel shook his head. It doesn't die. Bruce placed the branch on the ground. It grows around the wound. Daniel looked at the tree. Bruce continued. The scar stays. But the tree keeps growing. Daniel was silent. Bruce looked at him. People are not so different. Daniel touched the bark. So I'm supposed to grow around it? Bruce nodded. Exactly. But then something happened. Something Bruce hadn't expected. Daniel disappeared. One evening. He didn't come to training. Bruce waited. 10 minutes, 20, an hour. Daniel never arrived. The next morning, still nothing. Bruce went to the old building. Daniel wasn't there. He asked around.
No one knew. Bruce returned to the training hall. The black notebook was still on the bench. Daniel had left it behind. Bruce opened it, page after page. Training notes, thoughts, fears, dreams. And then he reached the final page. There was only one sentence. I think I have to find out why my father left. Bruce stared at the words. Then he looked toward the door. For the first time in months, Daniel had chosen to face something without him. Bruce understood. This was not a lesson he could teach. Daniel had to discover the answer himself. 3 days passed, then 4. On the 5th morning, the door opened. Daniel walked inside. Bruce looked at him. The boy was different. His face was bruised, his clothes were dirty, but his eyes were calm. Bruce didn't ask what happened. Daniel walked toward him. I found him. Bruce waited. My father. And? Daniel sat down. He wasn't the person I thought he was. Bruce said nothing. He didn't leave because he didn't love me. Daniel swallowed. He left because he was afraid. Bruce looked at him. Afraid of what? Daniel shook his head. I don't know. He looked at the floor. But I don't hate him anymore. Bruce nodded. Daniel reached into his pocket, pulled out the broken wooden car. I fixed it. Bruce looked at it. The missing wheel had been replaced. It wasn't perfect. The paint was chipped. One side was still cracked. But it worked. Bruce smiled. You fixed it. Daniel nodded. It took me a long time. Bruce looked at him. That's why it matters. Daniel smiled. Then Bruce said, Now you're beginning to understand. Understand what? Bruce pointed toward the toy. Some things don't go back to the way they were. Daniel looked at the car. But they can still move forward. That night, Bruce gave Daniel a challenge. He placed a wooden board in front of him. Daniel stared. What am I supposed to do? Break it. Daniel laughed nervously. I can't. Bruce smiled. You said that before. Daniel raised his hand. He struck. Nothing. Again. Nothing. His hand began hurting. Bruce stopped him. Don't use anger. Daniel looked confused. Then what do I use? Focus. Daniel took a breath. He remembered every night alone, every insult, every empty stomach, every time someone told him he wasn't worth anything. But then he remembered something else. Bruce sitting beside him in the rain, the gloves, the notebook, the words. You are stronger than you think. Daniel took one breath, then struck. Crack! The board broke. Daniel froze. He stared at his hands. Bruce didn't celebrate. He simply nodded. Now, Bruce pointed toward the broken pieces. Remember this. Daniel looked at him. The board was never your enemy. Daniel waited. Your fear was. But Bruce had one final surprise. He reached beneath the table, pulled out an envelope, and handed it to Daniel. Daniel opened it. Inside was money, a significant amount. Daniel immediately looked confused. You said money wasn't the answer. Bruce nodded. It isn't. Then why are you giving me this? Bruce sat down. Because sometimes money can open a door. He paused. But you still have to walk through it. Daniel looked inside the envelope. What is it for? Bruce answered, School. Daniel stared at him. You want me to go to a better school? I want you to have choices. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Bruce continued, I can't choose your future. He pointed at the envelope. I can only help make sure poverty doesn't choose it for you. Daniel held the envelope tightly. Then he did something unexpected. He tried to give it back. Bruce frowned. Why? Daniel shook his head. I don't want you to think I stayed because of money. Bruce smiled. I know. Daniel looked at him. Then why? Bruce answered, Because I know why you're here. Daniel waited. Bruce pointed toward the training floor. You came because you wanted to become someone you could believe in. Daniel couldn't hold back the tears. Bruce stood. And that, he paused, is worth more than anything in that envelope. That night, Daniel opened his notebook one final time. He wrote, Today, Bruce gave me money. He stopped, then crossed it out. He wrote again. Today, Bruce gave me a choice. He stopped, then added, And I think that's worth more. He closed the notebook. Outside, Los Angeles was glowing beneath the night sky. Daniel stood at the window. For the first time, he wasn't wondering where he would sleep. He was wondering where his life could take him. But neither Daniel nor Bruce knew that their time together was running out, because life was about to take Bruce somewhere Daniel couldn't follow. And before their final lesson, there would be one night that neither of them would ever forget. A night when Daniel would have to make the hardest decision of his young life, without Bruce standing beside him. And when that night came, the little boy who once believed nobody would ever remember his name would finally discover whether Bruce's greatest lesson had truly become part of him. Because sometimes a teacher doesn't change your life by staying forever. Sometimes he changes your life by teaching you how to stand when he is no longer there. The night was unusually quiet. Los Angeles was glowing beneath a sky filled with distant lights. But inside the small training hall, Bruce Lee was packing his things. Daniel stood near the doorway. He didn't understand why. Bruce had been quieter than usual all day. No jokes, no long explanations, no extra training, just silence. Daniel finally asked, Are you leaving? Bruce stopped. He looked at the boy. For a little while. How long? Bruce hesitated. I don't know. Daniel's face changed. You're coming back, right? Bruce smiled. That's the plan. But Daniel had learned something about life. Plans didn't always survive. People left. People disappeared. Promises sometimes became memories. He looked down. I don't like it. Bruce walked toward him. I know. Daniel tried to hide his emotions. Who am I supposed to train with? Bruce smiled. You've been listening all this time? Daniel nodded. Then you already know. Bruce pointed toward the training floor. Train yourself. Daniel shook his head. That's not the same. Bruce looked directly into his eyes. No. A pause. It isn't. Then Bruce placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. And that's exactly why you have to learn. The next morning, Daniel arrived before sunrise, but Bruce wasn't there. He waited.
5 minutes, 10, 20. Nothing. Daniel looked at the empty training floor. For the first time, he felt that old fear again. The same feeling from the night Bruce found him. Alone, forgotten. He sat on the bench. His hands began shaking. Then he remembered Bruce's words. When everything inside you tells you to quit, stand. Daniel slowly stood. He put on the gloves, walked toward the heavy bag, and punched. Once, twice, again. The bag moved. Daniel kept going. He wasn't Bruce. He wasn't powerful. He wasn't experienced. He was still a kid. But he was there, and for the first time, he didn't need someone to tell him to continue. He already knew. Days passed.
Bruce still wasn't there. Daniel trained alone, every morning, every afternoon, every evening. Sometimes his punches were weak. Sometimes he fell. Sometimes he cried. But he kept coming back. And then something unexpected happened. Other students began noticing him. One older student approached. "You've been training alone for days." Daniel nodded. "Who teaches you?" Daniel looked toward the empty corner where Bruce used to stand. "He did." "Where is he?" Daniel shook his head. "I don't know." The man looked at the boy. "You still train?" Daniel nodded. "Why?" Daniel looked at the heavy bag. "Because he told me to?" The man smiled. "Then keep going." One evening, Daniel found something on the bench. A small black notebook. His notebook. But there was a new page inside. Bruce's handwriting. Daniel's hands trembled as he opened it. Only a few words were written. "If you are reading this, you are probably wondering why I am not here." Daniel swallowed. He kept reading. "One day, everyone you love will disappoint you. Some will leave. Some will change. Some will die." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Then came the next line. "And when that happens, you will have two choices. You can become bitter, or you can become better." Daniel stopped reading. He wiped his eyes, then turned the page. The final sentence was waiting for him. "Choose carefully." Daniel closed the notebook, held it against his chest, and cried. Not because Bruce had left, but because he finally understood what Bruce had been trying to teach him. Bruce wasn't trying to make Daniel dependent on him. He was trying to make Daniel independent of everyone. Years passed. Daniel grew older. The little boy with the torn jacket became a young man. He went to school. He studied. He worked. He struggled. He failed. He tried again. He never became rich, but he built a life, a real one. And every time life knocked him down, he remembered the floor of that old training hall. Every time someone told him he wasn't good enough, he remembered Bruce. Every time he felt alone, he opened the black notebook. And every time he wanted to quit, he remembered one sentence. Tomorrow, you do one more. One afternoon, Daniel was walking through a neighborhood not far from where he had once slept. He was carrying groceries. People passed him. Cars moved through the streets. Children played on the sidewalk. It looked like an ordinary day. Then Daniel heard something. A child's voice. "Please?" He turned. A little boy was sitting beside a wall. Dirty clothes, old shoes, a small bag beside him, and in his hands, a broken toy. Daniel stopped walking. The world seemed to disappear. He knew that face. Not the exact face, the feeling, that look in the eyes. The look of a child who had stopped expecting anyone to care. Daniel slowly approached. He crouched down.
"What's your name?" The boy looked suspicious. "Michael." "Where are your parents?" The boy looked away. "I don't have anyone." Daniel felt something tighten inside his chest. He sat beside him, just like Bruce had once sat beside him. The boy stared at him. "Are you going to give me money?" Daniel reached into his pocket. He had money. He could have handed it over. But then he remembered the rainy night years ago. He remembered his own words. "If you give me money tonight, tomorrow I'll still be alone." Daniel slowly put the money away. Then he asked, "Do you want to tell me what happened?" The boy looked at him, and suddenly he began crying. Daniel didn't interrupt, didn't lecture him, didn't tell him to be strong. He simply stayed, just like Bruce had stayed. After several minutes, the boy finally whispered, "I'm not good at anything." Daniel looked at him. "Who told you that?" The boy shrugged. "Everybody." Daniel smiled sadly. He had heard those words before, a long time ago. He looked at the boy and said, "Then everybody is wrong." The boy stared at him. Daniel reached into his bag. He pulled out something, the old black notebook, the same notebook Bruce had given him. Its pages were worn, its cover was damaged, but it had survived. Daniel opened it. The first page was still there. "You are stronger than you think." The boy looked at the words. "What does that mean?" Daniel smiled. "It means you're not finished." That night, Daniel took the boy somewhere safe. He found him food. He helped him contact the proper people. He made sure the boy had a safe place to sleep. But before Daniel left, the boy stopped him. "Why did you help me?" Daniel stood quietly, then answered, "Someone helped me once." "Who?" Daniel looked down at the notebook. His name was Bruce. "Was he your dad?" Daniel smiled. "No." "Then why did he care?" Daniel thought for a moment. "Because sometimes," he looked at the boy, "you don't have to be someone's family to save them." Years later, Daniel would tell that story many times. But he never told people that Bruce had given him money, because that wasn't what he remembered most. He remembered the rain. He remembered the broken toy. He remembered Bruce sitting beside him on the sidewalk. He remembered the gloves. He remembered falling. He remembered getting back up. And most of all, he remembered the first time someone looked at him and didn't see a poor child. They saw a human being, someone worth believing in. One evening, Daniel returned to the old training hall. The building looked smaller now. The walls were older. The wooden floor was scratched. Dust covered the windows. He walked inside. Everything was quiet. He stood where Bruce had once stood. Then he closed his eyes. For a moment, he could hear it. The sound of the heavy bag. The footsteps. The gloves. Bruce's voice. Again. Daniel smiled. He opened his eyes. On the wall was an old photograph. Bruce, young, focused, alive. Daniel stood in front of it. He didn't say anything. He simply placed his hand against the wall, then whispered, "Thank you." But Daniel wasn't finished. He walked to the old bench, sat down, opened the black notebook. There were only a few blank pages left. He picked up a pen and wrote, "Bruce taught me how to fight." He paused, then crossed it out. He wrote again, "Bruce taught me how to stand." He paused, then crossed that out too. Finally, he wrote, "Bruce taught me that nobody should have to face the world believing they are worthless." Daniel looked at the sentence, then continued, "So I will spend the rest of my life making sure fewer people feel that way." He closed the notebook, And for the first time, he understood the real gift Bruce had given him. It wasn't money. It wasn't martial arts. It wasn't even confidence. It was responsibility. The responsibility to become for someone else what Bruce had once been for him, a reason to keep going. Years later, Daniel had a small training school of his own. It wasn't luxurious, it wasn't famous, but every evening children came through the doors. Some were shy, some were angry, some were afraid, some had difficult lives. Daniel never asked them how much money their families had. He never asked where they came from. He only asked one question: "What do you want to become?" One little boy once answered, "Strong." Daniel smiled. "Strong enough to beat everyone?" The boy nodded. Daniel shook his head. No. He pointed toward the training floor. "Strong enough to get back up." The boy smiled. And Daniel saw himself in that child, the same fear, the same uncertainty, the same desperate need for someone to believe. Daniel walked over, placed a pair of gloves in the boy's hands. "Put these on." The boy looked nervous. "I don't know how." Daniel smiled. "Good." The boy looked confused. Daniel repeated the words Bruce had once said to him. "That means we can start from the beginning."
That night, after everyone had gone home, Daniel stood alone in the training hall. He looked at the empty doorway. For a moment he imagined Bruce standing there, arms folded, watching, waiting. Daniel smiled. Then he whispered, "I kept my promise." The room remained silent, but Daniel didn't feel alone, because some people leave your life without ever truly leaving you. Their voice stays, their lessons stay, their kindness stays. And sometimes, their greatest gift isn't something they gave you, it's something they taught you to give others. Daniel opened the old notebook one final time. The first page still carried Bruce's words, "You are stronger than you think." Daniel turned the page, then another and another, until he reached the very last page. He wrote one final sentence. "I thought Bruce Lee saved me that night." He paused, then continued. "Years later, I finally understood." Another pause. "He didn't save me. He taught me how to save myself." Daniel closed the notebook. The lights went out. The screen slowly faded to black, and over the darkness came a final voice. Final voiceover. Sometimes a child doesn't need someone to give him a fortune. He needs someone to look him in the eyes and tell him that his life still has value. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't money, it's belief. Because money can feed someone for a day, a house can shelter them for a night. But when you teach someone to believe in themselves, you can change the direction of their entire life. Bruce Lee didn't give Daniel a perfect childhood. He couldn't erase his pain. He couldn't bring his mother back. He couldn't rewrite the past. But he gave him something the past could never take away. A reason to stand, a reason to keep moving, a reason to believe tomorrow could be different. And years later, Daniel gave that same gift to another frightened child. Because that's how kindness survives. Not through money, not through fame, not through monuments, but through one human being helping another human being stand back up. And perhaps that was Bruce Lee's greatest lesson of all. The strongest person in the room isn't always the one who can defeat everyone. Sometimes it's the person who has every reason to give up, but chooses to help someone else keep going. The screen fades completely black.
and one final sentence appears in the silence. Bruce Lee gave a poor little boy more than money. He gave him a future.